All right, everybody. I finally got a decent enough laptop and another screen, so I decided to start recording some Magic videos, mainly so that I can go back and review them and see, work on my playing and see the mistakes I've made previously. Um, I'll be playing Pauper mostly. As of right now, I'm a poor college student and I can't afford to spend a lot of money on Moto, so I bought into Pauper a few weeks ago. I was introduced to the format and fell in love with it immediately. If you haven't played Pauper, I highly recommend it. Um, so I asked a few friends of mine what deck they wanted me to go over in Pauper first, and this one's kind of an outlier. Um, and it typically goes by the name of Acid Trip. Um, that name coming from this card right here, the namesake Reality Acid. Um, Basically, the deck it's a blue-white deck, and basically what it does is it generates a card advantage and just a ton of value by playing things that do stuff when they either enter the battlefield or leave the battlefield, and then you have creatures that pick up permanents you own, like Core Skyfisher or Dreamstalker. Um, yeah, so uh, let's get to looking at the cards in the deck. We'll go over the lands first. Most of them are pretty typical for what you see sometimes in Pauper. We have the Karoo lands, I guess you call them, bounce lands, whatever. Zori's Chancery. When it enters tapped, when it enters battlefield, you return another land. You return a land you control to the back to your hand. Good for resetting stuff like Kabira Crossroads, which you gain 2 life, or Radiant Fountain or Tranquil Cove, which also all of those gain you life also. Um, we have a couple of Evolving Wilds just to help smooth out the mana a little bit. A few basics. We have the Crossroads that I mentioned earlier. It's just land you can pick up and reuse if you need to against aggressive decks. Um, Lonely Sandbar is actually a pretty sweet one because if you need it, if you need blue mana on like turn 2 or turn 3, you can play it early on, and later on in the game, if you ever get a chance, you can use the Dreamstalker or the Core Skyfisher and pick it back up and cycle it away when you don't need it anymore. So that's a pretty sweet little interaction right there. We got a few planes, a couple quicksands. This card is surprisingly, it is pretty good. Um, I was just playing a couple matches before I started recording, and this card killed like 3 or 4 creatures in the course of those matches, so um, pretty effective. Radiant Fountain, really good against aggro. It's an untapped land that gains you 2 life. Picking it back up with Skyfish or Dreamstalker, um, if you have the time, just kind of it sets them back so far. And Tranquil Cove doesn't set them back as far, but it's still a good it's a dual land and gains you some life. We have some Preordained for card selection and uh, some library manipulation. Just overall a pretty decent Magic card. We have a full playset of Journey to Nowheres. It's a good removal spell because it hits everything, namely Gurmag Angler, which is a huge card in Pauper. Um, so if your opponent's playing black, you usually want to save these for later on in the game when they start to play bigger threats because it can get almost any creature. There are a few X-proof creatures that it won't be able to get, but those are only really seen in a select few decks, so um, typically I just save these for like Gurmag Anglers or something similar. Um, we have the Core Skyfisher, like I mentioned earlier. It's a 2/3 flyer for 2 that picks up a permanent when it comes into play. Um, we have Lone Missionary, which is also very good against aggressive decks. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life, and picking this back up and playing it again uh, is almost like time walking your opponent with a 2/1 body. It is just it's so good. Couple momentary blanks, just flickers a creature, and it has flashback, so it's really good against spot removal and it's really good at resetting your Dream Stalkers to go pick up Reality Acids or Faith Shredders if you need to keep them alive, or resetting a Mole Drifter. Uh, Pretty sweet interaction is evoking the Mole Drifter and then stacking the triggers so that the draw 2 resolves first, and in response to the evoke trigger, you can momentary blink it, draw another 2 cards, and then you get to keep it afterwards. So for the same mana cost as just normally casting a Mole Drifter, you get to draw 4 cards instead. So that's pretty sweet. We have the Dream Stalkers. It's a 2-drop 1/5 that bounces a permanent when it comes into play. Very effective at blocking. Uh, and one of the only 2 creatures in the deck that actually picks cards up. Just pretty useful overall. Him and Core Skyfish are really what run this deck. We have a couple Spreading Seas to help attack the opponent's mana base and just get some value off of it. Picking these up is also pretty good if you just need to draw cards. Crystallization. I actually hadn't. This card wasn't in the deck the first few times I played it. But then I saw a list playing this card, and I was like, "This card is awesome. I want to play it." Basically, it just halts any creature from ever attacking you or anything, and if you really need to, you can just get rid of it. But usually, you can just target it with something and it'll get exiled. But usually, just slapping a crystallization on a card on a creature will basically make it useless. We have a couple Heliod Pilgrims. This card is in here namely to go fetch cards like Reality Acid or Hobble or Crystallization or Spreading Seas. It can just grab a bunch of stuff. We have a 1-up Hobble. It's kind of like a pacifism, but it draws you a card when it enters, and the creature can only not block if it's a black creature. I don't know why that's on there, but that's what the card does. So we have the namesake card, Reality Acid. You can enchant any permanent, and it has Vanishing 3, so after 3 turns, it leaves the battlefield. You have to sacrifice it. And when Reality Acid leaves the battlefield, the enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices it. So, in this deck, we're playing this card namely to, once you get to 5 mana, in 1 turn you get to go Reality Acid, your Gurmag Angler, or your land, or your Ulamog's Crusher or something, and then play a Dreamstalker or a Core Skyfisher, pick up the Reality Acid, they have to sacrifice whatever was enchanted, and then you still have the Reality Acid to use again. So it's basically a repeatable Vindicate, which is pretty awesome at common rarity. Like, I mean, that's a pretty powerful combination of cards right there. We have a couple Seagate Oracles. It's just good card selection, and a 1/3 body is pretty good at blocking creatures on the ground. So just a good creature overall. We have Faith Shredders. Basically makes it so whatever is enchanted can't activate abilities unless it's a mana ability, and if it's a creature, it can't attack or block, and you gain 4 life. It's kind of slow because it costs 4 mana, but if you do get there when you're playing an aggressive deck, just gaining 4 life and stopping their creature in his tracks is pretty relevant. And then we have Mole Drifter. This card is in almost every blue deck in Pauper. Just being able to being able to cast it for 3 when you really need to draw cards is good, and then also if you don't need to use it right away and you get to turn 5, being able to just get a 2/2 body that flies and draws you 2 cards is also very good. Really good with Momentary Blink, like I was saying earlier. Even if it's a turn or 2 later we get to Momentary Blink this card, it's just so good. On the sideboard, we have 2 Dispels. Normally comes in against blue decks because they play a lot of counter magic, like Mono Blue Delver. Might come in against burn decks, but I typically just bring these in against the decks like Mono Blue Delver or Blue Black Teachings. We have a Relic of Progenitus, which is good against graveyard decks like the green-black Dredge deck that was featured on uh, the Tolarian Community College channel, YouTube channel. Um, it's also surprisingly good against the blue-black Teachings deck, which, if you don't know what that deck is, you can look it up online, and in a couple weeks or so, I might be posting a video where I play it, because I have the deck over here. It's actually pretty funny. I like the deck a lot. We have a couple Circle of Protection Reds. It's pretty obvious what it comes in against. It comes against like Burn, Goblins, any red-based aggressive deck really. It's just a super strong card. Most of the time when this lands, if they don't have a way to remove it, it just stops them from uh, continuing on with their onslaught. You know, we have a couple counter spells. I typically bring these in against the mono blue Delver decks, and um, I don't know if I'd bring it in against Tron. They have a lot of threats, and only having 2 counter spells isn't really going to do anything against them. But it's just a very, very strong Magic card to have at common level. So yeah, we have a Holy Light. It's really good against elves and goblins. Basically, any small deck that likes to go wide, this card just kind of gets them. It's kind of like a instant speed board wipe, which is pretty good in Pauper. We have a couple of core sanctifiers. I like this card against the affinity decks because they play the artifact lands, the colored ones like Tree of Tales and Vault of Whispers, and being able to go after their mana and play a 2/3 that can trait or that can block their Frogmites or trump block their other guys. You can also just kill the creatures, which is also very good. Dusted Dust also comes in against Affinity because just getting to exile 2 lands for 3 mana is also very good. Or like they're 2 Mirror Enforcers or really whatever you want to go after. Curse of the Bloody Tome comes in against the decks that don't present a decent clock against you. So the decks like the Blue-Black Teachings deck where they just kind of dirtle around for the first 20 turns of the game. If you just land this on turn 3 and it resolves, the game's going to end pretty quickly. Because I don't know if that deck even has a way to answer this. And Battle Screech, I'm honestly not sure why it's in here. I'm assuming it's for the control matchups or the grindy matchups where you just need where the games are going to go long and you're going to be able to cast this. It seems like a pretty decent card. Flying is pretty relevant in Pauper. Just being able to get in as much damage, like being able to get in damage when you can, is pretty relevant. So yeah, that is the blue-white acid trip deck, and I'm just gonna play a few matches. I'm not gonna be playing in a league or anything, because I don't want to spend the money on those. I think you have to pay money. I'm not actually sure. I'm kind of new to MTGO, but I'm just gonna go queue up with some people and play a few matches, and we'll see how it goes.